Good day, viewers, and welcome to Ace in English. I hope my Acers are ready for a fun session as we continue to explore the amazing English language. Today, we will be discussing passivization in sentences and investigating ways in which we can transform active sentences to passive sentences. So, let's begin. Before we dive deep into passivization, let us gather some background information. In most English sentences, the subject performs the action that is indicated by the verb. For example, Marilyn mailed the letter. In this sentence, the subject Marilyn does the verb or action, and because of this, the sentence is said to be in the active voice. In a sentence using active voice, the subject of the sentence performs the action expressed in the verb. However, we can change the normal word order of many active sentences so that the subject is no longer active, but is instead being acted upon by the verb. So the same sentence, Marilyn mailed the letter, can become the letter was mailed by Marilyn. In this new sentence, the subject, the letter, is being acted upon and is said to be in the passive voice. In a sentence using passive voice, the subject is acted upon. He or she receives the action expressed by the verb. Passivization is seen as the process of changing an active sentence to a passive sentence. Now let us venture into today's task. Today we will be exploring three properties which differentiate passive sentences from active sentences. We will discuss passive sentences generally requiring the auxiliary verb be when being constructed, that the main verbs in passive sentences are in the participle form of the verb, and also that the expression which serves as a complement of an active verb surfaces as a subject of the sentence in the corresponding construction. We will also be utilizing these properties to transform active sentences to passive sentences. So let us look carefully at each of these properties. Firstly, there are typically 8 forms of the verb to be. Passive sentences generally require any of these forms when being constructed. In the active sentence, she eats the hamburger, we see where there's only one verb which functions as a main verb, eats. However, in the sentence, the hamburger was eaten by her, we see where the main verb eaten is preceded by was, which passivizes the sentence. It must be noted that active sentences can use forms of the verb to be, as in the example, I am eating the hamburger. However, active sentences are not limited to these verbs. The passive voice expressions verb phrases will always include a form of the verb to be. Another way to differentiate active and passive sentences is to recognize that the main verbs in passive sentences are in the participle form of the verb. For example, in the sentence, she eats the hamburger, the verb eat is expressed in the present tense, as opposed to the passive sentence, the hamburger was eaten by her. The main verb eaten is in its participle form. The final difference we will look at today is that in the active sentence, the expression which serves as a complement of a verb surfaces as the subject of the sentence in the corresponding passive construction. In the example, hundreds of spectators watch the match. The match functions as the complement of the verb, as it comes after the verb and gives more information about the verb. In its passive form, the sentence becomes, the match was watched by hundreds of spectators. Here, the match acts as the passive subject. This is because in the passive voice, the subject is the recipient of the action. Take a minute to look at the sentence below. Is the sentence in its active or passive voice? Now change it to its passive form. The English language is most certainly dynamic but interesting. From our session, we discovered that sentences can be constructed and reconstructed in different ways without losing the intended meaning. By using our knowledge of sentence structures as speakers of the English language, we are better able to understand its grammar. Today, we sought to understand the process of passivization, which is a transformation of the active sentence into a passive sentence. Knowing how to construct passive sentences is quite beneficial, as it helps to avoid unnecessary repetition in style of writing. Likewise, competence in active sentence construction improves clarity for readers of your work. Knowledge of this grammatical feature most certainly assists all English users in improving their skills in both reading and writing. See you next week.